Hi, Hadassah. Thanks for being on my podcast.
Thanks, Jody. It's really a pleasure to be here. I love your podcast. I love your ministry, and I'm really very happy to talk with you now and to share my story with your listeners. I hope they will be encouraged.
Oh, I know they're going to be encouraged. I love that. You know what? I was trying to think about how long ago we met. We met through Compel, which is a writing group through Proverbs 31 Ministry. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. I joined Compel in 2020, so I guess 3, 4 years should be. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be right.
Mhm.
And so, yes, and so we've kept in touch. And were you a writer for my blog? You were, correct? You wrote a
Yes,
story for my
yes.
Heartbreak to Strength. Yeah,
Okay.
it's all coming back to me. And so
Yeah.
anyways, this book that we're going to highlight today has been one in the making, and I'm so glad it's out and now can be in the hands of the readers. It's called Draw Near: How Painful Experiences Become the Birthplace of Blessings. And you know what? We both have walked through multiple heartbreaks. And I do believe that these things that are hard that we walk through do become this place where God shows up big and there's this blessing, this blessed in the mess. And so I wanted you to kind of share about I know there's multiple heartbreaks. We're going to get to all of them, but let's start with the story of your infertility journey because I think that Mother's Day just happened, at least here in America, it was yesterday. And
Yes.
oh my goodness, I know for many women, it's a really hard day. And so I'd love to hear you kind of share a little bit about your story.
Yes, I married quite late in my 30s, and in the beginning, somehow or more my husband, didn't want to have children. And when I was 35, then actually the whole journey of becoming a mother started because the yearning, this a strong desire to become a mother, this couldn't be stilled. And we started then at 35, and approximately till I got 40, we went through this journey, and it turned out that I guess towards when I was 38, that I don't have any more eggs, and nothing helped. No medical procedures, no prayers, no nothing really helped. Actually, they told me the last possibility, or the only one possibility, to become a biological mother was through a donor egg. And even this we considered with my husband. And I even underwent this procedure. However, in Bulgaria, because in Austria it was not allowed for whatever reasons, we were living then in Austria. And I underwent this procedure, and embryos were implanted and everything, but no pregnancy, nothing. So really nothing helped. And parallel with this, we started an adoption procedure in Austria. And this procedure was approximately 5 years. And after 5 years, we got the news that we are out of the list because of our age, because there are requirements in the law that between the age difference between the child and the parent should be so and so. And we were exceeding this limit because in Austria you can adopt only babies. This is simply the law. We can't adopt a child of any other age, only babies. So, and everything somehow came together. No possibility for a biological child, no possibility for adoption. And it was absolutely clear, despite all my prayers. And also, I thought, and I'm still convinced up to date, that God was leading this journey because everything was done through a lot of prayer and asking for guidance, what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and so on. Nevertheless, I needed to accept that the answer was no, that this was
Mm.
simply God's will for my life, that I will not be a mother, biological children or adopted children. I simply needed to accept this. And I think this was one of the biggest struggles in my life, to accept it, to
Mm.
really humble myself and to accept that it's not the way I want it, and
Mm.
to accept the death of a dream, the death of a desire, the death of a I don't know. I think only women can understand this. Not that I'm underestimating men, but we are simply ingrained with this strong desire to give life. This
Mhm.
is simply in our DNA, and when we somehow experience that this is not possible, at least not in this way, we find it extremely difficult to reconcile this calling, this longing with actually the reality, with our limitations. And this is where the struggle lies. And part of this infertility journey was also that I developed, and perhaps many of the women who struggle with infertility issues are prone to develop such. So I developed generalized anxiety disorder as part of this journey, and also even to the point where I had 1 or 2 years of very strong panic attacks also as part of this. And this was another, so to say, parallel struggle which I needed to fight together with God, how to get free of this, because this is really paralyzing, really paralyzing.
Right.
And yeah, and then I found out that I also have an extreme anger issues, which I never thought. Anger issues mainly towards God in the first place, that He's
Yeah.
not giving me what I want. And then also towards myself, for example, that I'm blaming myself, that I was wasting my time, why I didn't do I this earlier, and yeah, such things. Also, anger feelings towards my husband, of course. And yeah, this was also another pillar of another area where it took a lot of time to process, to go through all this stuff, to get real peace. And also I learned something else, that strong desires like this, the desire to become a mother, especially when they're unfulfilled or restricted in some way, can really turn, unfortunately, into controlling desires. I learned this term for the first time then. This means they become idols simply because they are consuming, taking too much energy, mental, emotional, or whatever energy of our lives, and preventing us actually to live normally in all other areas of our lives. It's really consuming. Yeah, so I needed to learn also to deal with this. And finally, after all these 5 or 6 years, God was preparing me to this breaking point where I could humble myself, where I could accept His no. And with this came also great freedom and new insights and new realization, because then after this ended, and now I'm really at great peace with this. I mean, it's longly accepted in my life, and I'm at peace. I will never forget it, because it was also the period of the deepest, the most intensive spiritual formation in my life. Because what I mean this, that we see only the top of the iceberg, but we don't see what is below. And
So true.
such pain, such deep pain, it simply forces us to take a look what is below, with God, of course, because He's really faithful to show us what lies underneath, what deep buried issues, things unprocessed, even traumas from the childhood or whatever. And then He invites us on this healing journey, on this spiritual formation journey, and this is really amazing. So this is what happened in these 5 or 6 years with me. So let's say it like this: I may not have given birth to a physical child or biological child, but definitely God birthed a lot of things in me. Definitely a new heart. I need to say this: a new heart, also a new mind, new ways to think, to see things, and new ways to relate to Him and to relate also to others. I would also say that this was also a time of death, but not only death of my dream and death of my desire. It was also more important death, and this was the death of my self-centeredness, and also the self-centeredness, or the self-centeredness of our marriage, because our marriage also got transformed from self-centered to God-centered marriage. And this was one
Wow.
of the biggest blessings I experienced in this period.
Wow. I have like goosebumps when you just said that I didn't actually birth the child, but all these other things were birthed in me, right? And as you're telling me these blessings that you were given in the middle of the hard, like Oh my gosh. It's such a powerful story because people are listening right now and they have these disappointments in their life. Maybe it's not the same infertility journey
Yes,
that you walk through, but it's the loss of a marriage. Maybe they're walking through a divorce, or it's the
yes,
loss of a what they hope for their child, and their child is estranged, or their child is taking a path they wouldn't want their child to take. Or, I mean, there's so many, a loss of a loved one, like a physical death. I mean, there's so many things that cause this disappointment. And this time where you have to wrestle with God. And I love that you talk about there's these things that God was wanting to, like, below the iceberg, bring out of you, right? Like,
mhm,
I love to talk about the tree with the deep roots, right? There's things underneath that
exactly.
he wants to work through with us and, develop our character and make us more
Yes,
like him. And really, what is the way he does that? It's through the hard things, right? No one wants to hear that, but that is the truth.
yes,
And that's what I love about your subtitle of your book is how the painful experience of your life became the birthplace of these blessings. And so I
exactly.
love that you in the book called these things the gifts that were hidden. Like each chapter says the gifts hidden in, and it says grief and disillusionment and unmet expectations and all these things that were like gifts. Like, how is that a gift? Like, that's awful, but inside of it, if you can look it a little deeper, right? Which again, depth is my thing. What's that
Exactly.
gift hidden in it, right? Like, because the thing itself is not the gift. Let me just make sure that's clear. Like, we're not
Yes.
saying, hey, be happy that these hard things are happening to you,
No.
but there is a gift underneath it. And so I really resonated with your unmet expectations chapter because I think we all have expectations that we think God, if God was a good God, this is what he would do. Or if God really loved me, this is what he would do. And sometimes that's not what happens. And we have to kind of go with, well, what does that mean? And I love that you say, so why does God allow us to deal with so many unmet expectations? What are the gifts he wants to give us through these painful experiences? And that's these gifts we've been talking about. So you have like a Bible story with each chapter, which I love that you brought so much Bible into your book too. And I've read the story of Ruth and Naomi so many times. And I love that you said, let's look at this story through the prism of unmet expectations because listen, I think this is one of the biggest places people struggle is this disappointment of unmet expectations, whether it's something small or something huge, right? And so, can you tell me what you learned from this story? I think it's so familiar to us, but that lens of unmet expectations, I think, is just a brilliant way to look at it.
Yes, I love Naomi and Truth. I feel very related to these two women because, yeah, both are widows. I'm a widow too. Both went through a lot of painful experiences in their lives, and both were deeply, especially Naomi, disappointed with God, bitter. She even became bitter, she said. And yeah, I can relate at a lot of levels with both of them in different aspects. It's really interesting that when I lost my husband, it was also through the story of Ruth and Naomi that God clearly told me to move back to my homeland, as
Mm.
Ruth did and followed Naomi, to come back to my family. And this was also another level to talk with me. Yeah, to unmet expectations. I think simply that as you said, everything in life, every painful experience is connected with loss. We simply go from one loss to another loss. And I have the feeling that our whole life is actually a grief journey. I'm coming recently more and more to this perspective to adopt it because I also thought with grief, okay, I will get healed from grief. It will get better. I'm getting healed. Everything's get better and so on. But to a certain point it's true, but it's also not true. I think I will live with my grief till the end of my life, till here on earth. It's simply part of me. Yes, it's transforming, it's mutating, or it's taking another shape in me, but it's still here. It's simply
Right.
one inseparable part of me. And yeah, this was now not so much on the topic. I'm sorry.
No, I love what you're
On your
saying.
question.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no. I love what you're saying because I think that's so true. It is a journey. And so many people want you to just get over it. Get over. It's like that's never going to happen. It's always going to
no,
be part of your story. But can you
always.
find how God could use it, right? And take that
Yes,
and use it in your life, either to grow you and change your character. Like you talked about the anger. Like I had an anger struggle too. I so related to when you said that. And I think anger is so
yes,
big with disappointment. I think when we have disappointing things, I think anger can really fall on the heels of that if that is one of your struggles. And so, no, I love that you just said, I think that this isn't a one and done. Like, there's going to be
no,
multiple
it's
things
not,
that happen in our
it's
life,
not, it's not.
more than one heartbreak. And also, those heartbreaks don't ever just completely stop. they do transform us. There are so many gifts, but yes, they're part of our journey. So I love what you were sharing. I think it was a
Yes.
perfect detour. But keep going on with
Yeah,
Ruth and
keep going.
Naomi.
Yeah, yeah, Naomi. Yes, back to Naomi. And I simply love how God, what great plans God and what love God had for these two women and for their unmet expectations. And okay, perhaps he didn't meet the expectations in the way they perhaps thought. Like Naomi said, okay, if I give birth to two sons and you married to these sons, and was so she was having expectations perhaps to becoming a mother again or grandmother, or to have offspring. She had some expectations, but she didn't see any way that this was going to happen. And of course, logically and from human perspective, this was not possible. But I love really the way how God took care of Naomi and how he took care of Ruth and how he actually rewarded her faithfulness, not just temporary for her life for the time being. I simply love this eternity line and how God sees really from generation to generation. And I'm sure this happened also with our lives, that we really, as with our hearts, we just see the top of the iceberg. We don't
Mm.
see really how God is we're going to use our faithfulness, our perseverance, and all these eternal spiritual blessings he's giving us, how he will use them for our benefits in eternity, but also for the benefits of many others who are coming after us. And especially in our callings as writers, words carry life, they have eternal impact, and who knows how long our words will live and impact people after us. So this is really awesome when we think from this perspective. But unmet expectations, I wanted to come to this now. Unmet expectations are tightly connected with desires. And I found out that also with my desire to become a mother, desires are really the driving fuel. They are the co-expression of our hearts. And of course, when we have expectations and desires and wishes which are not fulfilled, of course, it's extremely painful. And of course, we need to address this with God. This is absolutely paramount that we need to address this. We should not get this under the carpet. And I have found out that there are at least three important hidden, or perhaps not so hidden, gifts or blessings when we struggle with unmet expectations. Perhaps this is part of the answer why one of the answers, why God is not giving us all we want. And of course, He will not give all we want, but I mean good godly desires. This is what
Yes.
I'm talking, not about selfish desires. I think one of the reasons is, of course, he wants to channel our desires and our unmet expectations to him, because he wants to be our greatest desire or our greatest passion. We want this too, of course, mentally, but it doesn't happen often emotionally, because so many people are, so many other things are getting into our hearts. We want this or that more than him, perhaps, at certain point. I don't know. This happened to me with my desire to become a mother. But he wants to channel this for sure, and to that we see him as our ultimate source of satisfaction, of our ultimate source of happiness. And also our met expectations can be a very good instrument to really keep us grounded and to help us set our hopes really on him, not on people or things that can always disappoint us, and that we can always lose. We will lose people and things,
Right.
but God we will never lose. And he simply, I think, wants through this experience to help us stay grounded in this hope which will never disappoint in himself, in his promises, and in his character, in his love, in which from which nothing can separate us. So I think these are two of the benefits which we can find in these unmet expectations. And of course, there are aspects of God's love which we will never experience if we are not put in a situation where we experience pain and disappointment. And then we have another kind of connection and fellowship with him. Then we can get from him a very specific comfort, which we will not be able to get if we don't pass through a certain experience or disappointment. So this for
So
sure.
good. Yeah, I do think that's so true. I think that I thought I had a strong relationship with God before
Yeah.
my divorce. But when I got that rug pulled out from under me and that disappointment and that unmet expectation, right, of just now I'm going to be a single mom. Oh my goodness. I mean, my intimacy with God changed so drastically that year. I tell people it was the hardest year of my life, but the most growing year in my faith because
Yes.
so much it was just like I need you, God. Like I never had needed him to that level before, right? And so that is such a beautiful gift in the middle of those and expectations
Yes.
and disappointments is you now need God in a way you didn't need him before. And I don't think we turn to God in our good times like we do when we do in our bad times. I mean, we say we're going to, but sometimes things get kind of a good status quo and we get a little more complacent and, and I
Yes.
think these times it's like, listen, you need me. And I do think sometimes you said these other things are good desires, right? To be a mom is a good desire, but like you said, sometimes it could become above your desire to be with God. Like you said, it could be an idol, or it can become something where you're seeking it so much, and God's saying, "I want to be first. I want you to seek me first, and then everything else falls into place." But I think it's so hard. I think it's very common for us to have wants and desires and longings, and when they're not met, it is so challenging. And so, I'd love for you to speak to the woman right now who's in the middle of her own desire that's not being met, whether that's a baby, like your example with the infertility, or a spouse. Maybe they want to be married and they're not married, or whatever it is. Like practically, what were some things that helped you? I know you said it was a 5-year journey, so this is not an easy
Mm-hmm.
answer, right? But
Yes.
like, is there something practically that you did that you could share that just helped you? Because you sounds like you came to this place of peace, which is amazing. You just have this peace that surpasses all understanding, right? That you didn't get the red bow tied up at the end of your story like some people, right?
No.
Like I have had people as guests and they've had the infertility journey struggle, but after 10 years they did finally get the baby.
Yeah.
And that's not your
Miracle.
story, Hadassah. And I
No.
I think there's people out there that that's not their story. The marriage is ending. It's not being tied up in a red bow. What do you say to those people that aren't there? It's one thing to struggle and then finally get what you want 10 years later, but that isn't how it happened for you. And I first of all, commend you for this book. I think it's so amazing to help people in the middle of their hard places, right? Or their painful experiences and how it can birth blessing. So, just what would you say to someone, just practically, what helped you?
Uh, I first would like to say something really especially to the women who struggle with infertility, first specifically to them and then more generally. This
Perfect.
what helped me the most, brought me the greatest peace and the greatest freedom was to realize and to accept it really in my heart, not just with my mind, that nobody and nothing can take away my call to mother, because all women are called to mother. And
Mm,
biological children or adoptive children or having children is one way to live out this calling. But God has many ways to live out this calling. And
yes.
we simply need to search for his will, how to live our calling to mother, because this is the DNA of every woman. And the Holy Spirit is a life giver. So he will always birth things in us. So perhaps
Mm,
God has called women to be spiritual mothers or to
yes.
give birth to ministries or to books or to whatever. But for sure, uh, whenever a woman is in union with God, this woman is not barren. She will for sure give birth. This is my birth to many things, to many
Yes.
children. She will have offspring. This is a promise,
I love
even if
that.
it's not biological.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? Spiritual mothers are so important in kids' lives. You know what? I have a mentor. And so you're right. There's many ways to mother. And I love you said birth a book, birth a ministry. I mean, there's so many ways that you can birth something and God's going to, yeah, so powerful. I love that you said that. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of Holly Girth. Have you read any of her books?
No, I didn't read the book, but I read regularly her devotions and
Yeah,
newsletters and whatever and podcasts.
because she had
Perhaps,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, she had a infertility struggle for many years too, and then she ended up adopting. I don't know if you know her story. I'll just
Mm-hmm,
tell you this real quick. She ended up adopting a foster child that was bridging out of the system. So 18, these kids are bridged out of the system, and they get no more support, no more help.
mm-hmm.
I have a child that's 21. I mean, 18, they're not quite ready to be on their own yet, right? And so she ended up going and speaking at one of these places, and then now this woman, they kind of adopted her at like, I don't know, age 20. Anyway, she was on the podcast and shared this story. It just reminded me what you said because she used to birth books and they used to talk to her about that. Those are her book babies. And I just think there is other things we birth as mothers and women that aren't necessarily like a baby, right? And that still means you
Yes,
are a mother. I love what you just said. Anyways, side little note, I'll put her link into the show notes because I think that episode's really powerful as well. And I think you would enjoy hearing it as well. Anyways,
yes,
keep going. I keep
yes,
interrupting you.
yes. No, no, no problem. That's wonderful. Yeah, and I want to say that to mother means to nurture, to mentor, to support, to encourage. And these are all things we can do every day in all possible
Yes.
forms. So this is really important to know. And when I adopt this in my life, when I really believed it, accepted it, embraced it, this really gave me a tremendous peace and freedom. So I was ready then to welcome and to look for the new plan or the new path God has for me when I adopted and accepted this truth. And the same is also for the father who wants to be a father. All men are called to father. So just a side
Mhm.
note. Yes, even
Yes. I love that.
children, not children. Yeah, and to the persons who struggle with unmet expectations or who are in the middle of pain and grief, and there is no, so to say, good ending or some kind of resolution, or the resolution we hope there will be. Yeah, I have just one simple advice or tip. This is always, it is and always will be a one and the same, and it is trust God. We need simply to walk by faith. This is all. This we are called to do this. We need to trust Him, especially when we don't understand.
Mm.
Especially when we don't see our why questions answered, or even in part at least answered. We need to trust him. We need to keep going. This was the same with me on my painful experiences. When a painful experiences comes, and I mean really something traumatic like betrayal or rejection or death or whatever, uh, you are in shock, and of course you don't understand, because undeserved suffering is still something we have a lot of problem with. I mean,
Mhm.
it's one thing to suffer as a consequences of something we have done, and another thing when it comes out completely out of the blue and contrary to all that we expect and pray. And but then really there's perhaps I felt this way, and perhaps the listeners can feel this way, that you don't see anything, you are plunged in darkness, you don't see a way forward. But for sure, if we remain close to God, and I would say it in another words, because I think this is my newly realized motto mission in life recently. If we remain faithful in suffering by
Mm.
trusting or relying on God's faithfulness, let's say this way, then there is always a way. Every single
Mm.
day, every single hour, there is a way. Sometimes we will see the bigger picture. Sometimes we will have the vision ahead. Sometimes perhaps not. But we need to keep walking, because God is always doing something. And this something He is doing is really much greater and much with more eternity impact than that we can think or imagine, than we can even understand. I think he is doing this for
Mm.
sure. He is working
So true.
because um, actually we need, we need to grow roots in him, and roots grow in the darkness, and they need the rain of a lot of tears. So
Mm. Wow.
this is the fact.
You are speaking my language. Roots. She's talking about deep roots. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. And you know what? It's so true. They really do grow the deepest, right? During those times where they get lots of water. And like you said, our tears. And I just think my greatest heartbreak did catapult me to my greatest growth. That's the question I asked on the back of the book is, did your greatest heartbreak catapult you to your
Yes,
greatest growth? And I think it did for you, as I'm hearing you talk about your infertility journey. And then you have another great heartbreak that we're going to talk about right now. You lost your husband. And I want to talk about this another chapter in your book called The Gifts Hidden in Disillusionment, because this I think is so true. This is what you say. I think so many people can relate to this. This is so powerful. You said, I thought I was a strong believer. Nothing could shake my faith in God because God would never disappoint me. I knew who he was, I knew his character and his love. No, I would never struggle with disillusionment until I did. Right. And it's like, I think a lot of people think I'm not going to have this struggle with God. And then all of a sudden something happens that, why God? Why is this happening? Like you already walked through 5 years of infertility. Now you have a loss of a spouse. It's like, God, what is happening? This is a lot for one person to bear. So tell me about what you learned about Job. This is the person that you focused on in this chapter. And oh my goodness, Job, thank God he's in the Bible, right? There's so much truth
yes,
that we can learn from him. And so I'd love to hear how that helped you in the middle of well, you could share a little bit about the loss of your spouse as well, that story, but then also how Job's story helped you with the disillusionment part.
yes. Uh, I think that, as you said, first of all believers will come through such a period of disillusionment. In fact, I
Mm-hmm.
think this is really needed and necessary because in my case, and this is how I would relate to Job too, God would use this to shake the foundation a little bit. So in this, what is not okay in the foundation to be removed, and another stronger parts perhaps to be imparted in this foundation, because it's really important. It's really important to come to a place of deconstruction. This is now the modern term. So when everything becomes dust, or we think everything becomes dust, and then to be reconstructed again by God, to be sealed again in a strong foundation, because I think the aim is really to become unshakable. And
Mm.
to become unshakable, we need to be shaken extremely,
Wow.
to be shaken strongly. Yeah, I don't like it neither. I didn't like it neither. But this is what happened. And I think exactly this is what happened with Job, because from one side we have his losses. I even don't want to speak about these losses. Nobody can compare with him in this regard. But then he had a much bigger struggle, and this is my struggle, which I experienced with disillusionment, because uh, his theology was shaken. So what he thought
Mm-hmm.
about God was shaken, what he thought about his relationship with God, or how things are working in the world, how God is ruling the world, and how he rewards, for example, the righteous, and the whole theology was actually shaken. But this was from one aspect that I related a lot to Job, and he became my friend, so to say, in this period, in this struggle.
Mm.
And I also related to another aspect, or I wanted to relate because he was an example for me, was the tenacity with which he held onto his faith. Because in
Mm.
one point he actually said, I want to die, or I prefer to die now before I lost my faith than to live
Mm.
further. So he
Right.
really hold on to this. And of course, the aspect which I most relate is that he was asking the whole time the why question, but he didn't
Mm-hmm.
get any answers. What he
Right.
got was a lesson. He got a lesson, and he got actually the answer, not the answers. He got the answer. He got a revelation of God himself, a deeper revelation, because at the end he said, now I see you. And I think in these words, I can't even imagine what is staying behind these words to say, now I see you. Now I see you, God. I think he realized, and perhaps everybody who went through such experience of disillusionment realizes the same, that what we gain as new ways of relating and learning and knowing God on a deeper level is much, much more valuable and breathtaking than what we are actually losing, and what was lost in the shaking, let's say,
Mm.
like this.
So
Yeah.
good. I love what you said. We want to become unshakable, but in order to do that, we have to be shaken. I was like, There we go. That is such a powerful statement right there. And no one wants to
Yes.
be shaken, right? No one, but we all want
No.
to be unshakable, but it's like you can't have one without the other. And I just thought this chapter was one of your strongest. I loved it so much. And I want to read. So at the end, so I just want to let
Yeah.
people know about this book. At the end, you have these declarations that you could kind of declare. And I would like to read the disillusionment ones because they were so strong. So it says, disillusionment is an opportunity to examine my theology and make changes. That's really strong. God longs to seal the cracks in my faith foundation with hope, comfort, and renewed strength. And you just talked about that because sometimes our foundation, there's cracks and we need to figure out what do we need to do with that? The goal of every test and trial is to receive more blessings and good from the Lord. It is enlargement and preparation to partake in his glory. God always has the last word. I was like, wow, so good. And I love that you have these powerful things we can cling to at the end because disillusionment is hard. And you're like, God, I don't understand. And I love that Job came with all these questions, and he didn't get the answers, but then you said he got the answer, like the revelation from God that he got and the personal encounter with God. And I think that's what it's all about. God wants us to wrestle with him so that we can
Yes. He
develop
wants.
a deeper relationship with him. But we're not going to wrestle with him if things are going great and we're just,
No.
life is so wonderful,
No.
we're not. And so I think it's the bless in the mess. It's the blessing in the middle of the hard, right? Which you talked about. And it is a hidden gift. And for those of you out there that are struggling, maybe I love the perspective you said is, can you look for these gifts? Can you look instead of going, how is God working? Or I don't see him working, so he must not be working. I love that song, Waymaker. It says, even when you
Mhm.
can't see it, he's
Yes.
working. And even when you can't feel it, he's working. So could you ask God, can open my eyes and show me how you're working or
Yes.
help me find these hidden gifts? I think perspective is so key. And I love what you shared in this chapter. I think it was so powerful for those that are struggling. And at the end of each chapter, you also have a losses and gains. So the losses you face, but what you gain when you draw near, which is
Yes.
the title of your
Yes.
book. And I think that drawing near is so the key, right? You could still
Yes.
have whys and you could still have questions for God. Just don't turn your back and walk away from your faith. Instead, like Job, like I'm not going to lose my faith. I'd rather die than lose my faith. And so be right there asking God and he will show up. And I think that leads us to the last one, the gifts hidden in grief. And you talk about one of the things that helped you with your disillusionment, and you even talk about this in your grief chapter, was lamenting. And David does this so well in the Psalms. So, can you practically share how you do it? I do it by journaling. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to hear how you do it. And then we'll wrap up with my favorite question about books at the end. But if you could just give us a quick, how do you, what do you do with the writing? You talked about writing. I'd love to hear practically what that looks like.
Yes, journaling is really a very important part of processing pain and grief. Every morning I start with journaling. I simply start writing how I feel, what I think. Also, I ask questions, which I have to got a lot of why questions and other things. I complain to him
Yes.
a lot, and this usually causes a lot of crying. So I'm
Mm.
really crying, but this is important because I think this is a healthy, a good way to express grief. Better to express it this way, then it finds its way anyway. So better to
Mm-hmm.
express it with tears and to give my emotions words, to pack it somehow in words. This is very important. And when I don't have words, and I think very often people who struggle with painful experience don't have words, here comes really the Psalms in big help, because I think in Psalms, God gave us really for every kind of situation of painful experiences, somehow a way to express it, a way to convey, to wrap it up with words. And this is really good. And I think maybe the most of the listeners don't know, perhaps they know, but 2/3 of the Psalms are lament Psalms. So they are
Yes.
complaining to God, a holy complaint, but complaining with hope. So this is a way somehow to have both sides, our pain, but also our faith, and to combine it together. And of course, another way I'm using writing to process my grief is through poems, because God gave me this poetic gift, and so I wrote
Mm.
quite a lot of poems, mainly in Bulgarian, because this is my mother tongue. And this also led to my second poetry book, which expressed my grief journey, and was published in January this year, which is called Memory Keeper. So it's really devoted to my husband and a collection of poems expressing this grief, and I think it will be very helpful to the readers in Bulgarian at least. At my book presentation, when I read a couple of my poems, there were a lot of people crying, and I also got a lot of feedback that it's really helping people to express this grief, these painful emotions. And I also write, a lot of articles from my blog or for other platforms, which a lot of them are related to grief and suffering, where I try to express what God showed me or taught me through my journey. So these are ways that I'm using.
I love that. I love that you wrote a book of poems. So they're only in Bulgarian. Is that what you were saying? They're written in that language only?
Yes, I have some in English too, but my poetry language is mainly my mother tongue. So I
Yes.
said, and perhaps on a later stage, if God is willing or leading, I could translate them in English and also publish them in English. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I
Perhaps
love
this is
that.
an
Well,
idea.
I love that you have the gift of poetry. That's amazing. But you said something really powerful that I want to highlight. You said it's complaining with hope. So I've never heard that before. And I love that. I've heard of lamenting as like, godly complaining, but like complaining with hope is just a beautiful way to explain what we're doing when we journal and when we lament and what the Psalms are doing, right? Because that's what David does. He's saying all the struggles, but then he
Yes,
turns it around at the end with a but or a yet God, but God. And then there's a hope statement, a truth,
yes.
a promise. And I just think that's so beautiful. Complaining with hope. I love that. Okay. So I love to end the podcast talking about books that have made an impact and changed your life besides the Bible. What has been an impactful book in your life?
Yeah, there are many, but of course I can't now make a list of 20 or 30. Anyway, I will.
Me too. Look at all the books behind me. I can name thousands, but go ahead and name like your
Uh,
top one or two or three.
yeah, top three, or let's say top four. Yeah, top three, top number one for sure is still, I'm referring to it, the book Boundaries by Henry
Mm,
Cloud and John Townsend. It's absolutely
yes,
foundational book for me, and it was exactly during my infertility journey when I dealt with this book and tried to implement a lot of things from this book, and it was really
perfect.
transformational. Then another book which helped me to deal with this controlling desire and anger issues, was really foundational, was Uprooting Anger by Robert Jones. So really a very, very
Mm,
helpful book, because it deals a lot with terms like what are needs, what are rights, what are desires, and how we need to make a difference between them, because we often think that our rights are actually, I won't say that we think our rights are our needs, or we simply mix them up. And God promised to satisfy our needs, but he never promised to grant us our rights or our desires. And this is also very
mm,
liberating stuff when we think so. And of course, the idea of submitting our rights. This is something very important. We need really to submit not only our desires, but also our rights to God, following the example of Jesus, who
yeah, I
submitted
love that.
also his rights. And then a third book, a little bit more recent, and which was really very helpful for me in processing my grief from the death of my husband, was the book from a fellow Compel member, Lisa Appelo, Life Can Be Good
Mm,
Again, because this
yes.
helped me really to change a little bit my perspective and to accept my life as it is in the moment, because I really didn't want the life I was living after the death
Hmm.
of my husband. So this helped me and changed me in this direction to give me hope, giving me hope that good things will come again in another shape, in another form, not what I exactly wanted or expected, but that good will come. So this was really a
Mm,
helpful book.
yeah. I love Lisa's book. She was on the podcast too well, I guess when it came out, was it 2 years ago or it was April of either a couple years ago, I think it came out. And so she was a guest. So
Yes,
I'll link that one as well. That's a great book for any loss, but especially the loss of a spouse, because that's what her storyline is as well. But
yes.
she has so many great truths. And oh yeah, she had a couple things in there that just rocked my world. So love that you recommended her book. And your book too is phenomenal. I love the gifts that are hidden in the middle of these hard things that you highlight in each chapter. And I only did 3 of them, gifts hidden in grief, disillusionment, and unmet
Yeah,
expectations, but you have so many more that I think would be so helpful for someone that's walking through a loss and walking through a painful experience, and you can see how God can use it to birth these blessings in your life. And I love that you used the birthplace of blessings because this is your book, baby, Hadassah. I
it
just
is.
love that. And I
It
love that
is.
you said that God can birth things out of us. And I just love that. So thank you for being on my podcast today and sharing. It's been such a joy.
Thank you. Thank you. It is such a joy for me too. And yeah, a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it very much, and I hope it will bring comfort and encouragement to your listeners.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. Thanks again.
Thank you.